All right. Hey, good morning, everyone. Really pleased to be here and talk about reaction commerce. I think you did a great intro. The other thing I'm really psyched about is this pennant. My kids are going to love this. I've never had that type of personalized thing to take back from a conference. Anyway, as you heard, right, Reaction Commerce is the company behind that rapidly growing open source project of a JavaScript e-commerce platform. You're probably wondering, okay, what does that mean? What does the technology around that mean? Why are we here talking about yet another e-commerce platform? We're really not talking about an e-commerce platform today. When I was speaking with the Shippo team, it was really about, hey, what can we provide as information or interesting information that we can convey to you about, like, what's the underlying technologies that we considered and actually bet on 4 years ago that actually is making up what is a modern platform and solving the challenges that retailers and brands have. And in fact, just in the last hour and a half, I ran across a few retailers and startup retailers that are having challenges, right? Things that we've experienced if you're a brand or retailer of an e-commerce platform to continue to experience. The good thing is there's been a shift, right? And I wanted to share those shifts with you in technologies, the way we perceive software, the way you procure software, think about these decisions, to give you some useful information about what are things are happening in the world, Silicon Valley, globally, in communities and open source, that you should consider in your business so that you can get a competitive edge. And that's what this day is all about. Okay, so is this moving? All right, so where I wanted to go with this, let's get a little bit of our geek on. Okay, let's talk about the connection of technologies to the impact of commerce. The things I'm going to talk about, we didn't invent these technologies, we're just leveraging them, right? And so from that standpoint, again, what we bet on is certainly showing up as value to the thousands or tens of thousands of retailers and brands out there that are evaluating, downloading, beginning to use the open source software that we've created, as well as I think it's about 14,000 and more of community that are really looking at this technology or platform that Reaction has. So one thing, the elephant in the room is e-commerce is still very hard, right? I think hopefully you guys would agree with that, right? There's a lot of systems to consider. I won't read all this, but the integrations of both legacy systems and the really cool things that you want to integrate and move your business forward, like a Shippo, it's challenging to deal with all those types of systems and applications, right? From both an IT or developer standpoint, but also from a business standpoint to be able to move your business forward quickly. So we felt your pain. A little bit about Reaction Commerce and why we exist is our founders 4 years ago, Sarah's a VP of product at Etsy. Aaron has run 20 different implementations in e-commerce sites for small and very large brands. They came together and they actually quit their jobs. And they said they were trying to figure out how to have a marketplace and a shop on an existing platform in the marketplace. They ran into so many challenges. They said, let's not do this for the rest of our career and figure out how to work with things. Let's go build a new e-commerce platform and actually build in a way that community can thrive and use it and contribute. My own experience as well in application development, I've built companies where we created electronic shelf labels for grocery stores, created product customization capabilities for major brands like Oakley, as well as lately an AI-based shopping application for the North Face, 100 Flowers, and other brands. The reason I call this out is the challenges of delivering applications for you and retailers and brands is significant. There's challenges in to be able to quickly create and innovate, to be able to deploy it, to be able to iterate on things, and to get that experience in the consumer's hands. You guys all know this in some way, whether you're a developer or whether you own your own business, that challenge is real. So one thing, right, when you think of e-commerce, e-commerce is growing. We all want to get into e-commerce. Last year, e-commerce grew by 13%, and will continue to grow 13 to 15%. What you may not know is that Amazon represented 53% of this growth last year, and it will probably remain the same. It was actually consistent year over year. So that leaves a 47%. Not that you may not be participating in the Amazon marketplace, but leaves 47% left to the rest of us. And we got Amazon and others leading the charge, innovating quickly, providing new customer experiences, connecting with their supply chain differently, working at all aspects of their business. You might feel like you need to move faster. You need to be in control of your own digital destinies. So things need to change, right? In fact, 72% of retailers, according to the Internet Retailer study just came out a few months ago, are planning on switching their e-commerce platforms in the next few years. Now, what does this mean? Is that they're seeking a new way of viewing things, right? There needs to be a platform to really accelerate where they need to go. There's other things that you may be considering in your operations and supply chain, new technologies, new advantages you might get from applications. The reality is everyone's looking for, not just retailers, looking for new technology or platforms that move their business ahead. And again, so that's what we're going to get into in a second, is what is changing fundamentally in our world around technology that you should consider in the purchase of any or use of any software. Another quick thing to talk about the challenges, right, is this whole iteration process, the ability to update and refresh your sites. Many of you might have experienced this, right? I constantly talk to retailers and brands, and I ask them, what's your challenge? And they say, well, I'll tell you what we want to be. We want to be, they use the words agile. They want to iterate. They want to continuously improve. I say, OK, tell me your schedule of how you do that on a yearly basis. They say, do you do that every week? Do you do that every month? And really what it comes down to, it's usually 1 to 2 major updates per year. That's a challenge, right, to update your business. I know that retailers and brands, the marketers, the merchandisers, know what to do. They just feel hamstrung sometimes and be able to do that, right? And so it really needs to shift where we're not thinking about a few major updates per year on our commerce platform. It needs to be continuous. All right, so let's jump into the first, the 3 technologies. They are containers, RealTime Reactivity, and open source. So given this is a shipping conference, I think you guys all know, right? Malcolm McLean. The idea of where we are now with modern cloud technologies came from shipping. Malcolm McLean in the 1950s really created what is containerization, right, from a shipping standpoint. That means when he was an entrepreneur, he had a shipping company, and he said, this is really such a pain that I bring my truck to the dock, I unload the products in my dock, I put it onto the ship, it gets to its destination, and then somebody else takes it, unloads all those products into a truck. Right? So that's a very intensive, slow, cumbersome process. Many things can go bad in that scenario. So the reason I call that out is this is where containers came from. If you haven't heard about it in the cloud, I'm about to explain more details. But the whole idea of easy transport, efficiencies, standardization came from that type of shipping containerization. And today we talk about things like Docker containers. There's different types of containers. All right, so a little bit of, from a standpoint of what you might think of, like, hey, Neil, you're talking about cloud. Like, what does that mean? What's the change here? So virtual machines on the left is maybe what you may or may not be familiar with. That is the ability to actually deploy and get your applications and everything we use in the cloud. It first came from the first generation of this, I would say, the idea of containerization. Taking full applications, in the case of virtual machines, including an operating system, and being able to throw that in a server, in a data center, and have it be able to run, right? So you can scale it globally, you can manage it in a more easier way. The challenge wasn't quite there, right? So a thing called like Docker containers, there's other things. This thing on the right, these containers are more lightweight, and it has some advantages of the ability to jam a lot of these containers onto one server, the ability for developers to code and know that they're working in one somewhat environment that, if you transport that application to another environment, you guys all know different operating systems, it doesn't break. So what does it mean? It makes for rapid development, easy transport, shipping to the location where you need to load it, run it, and manage it, just like shipping. That's what Docker containers have done. I guess an analogy, if we're a little bit of the geek stuff here, is that when you think of Docker containers, like how does this relate to shipping? Well, if you look at Docker, there is like a dock, right? It's a standard way to actually take these containers and use them quickly and reliably and with resiliency. Now, if you take a look at where we were before containers, and the growth of containers taken off, right? Is that you have these virtual machines, and basically it would be akin to like having a container and shipping and actually attaching a customized or specialized forklift everywhere it went. That's a little bit challenging, right, to be able to do that. All right, so there's a little bit of tech, but okay, Neil, where is this going? What does this mean? Well, this whole idea of the ability to create applications, deploy updates for your sites, for your integrations, for your company, shouldn't happen in 1 or 2 times a year, right? So the idea of containers for any application, whether it's Reaction or others that are using this type of technology, is that updates should no longer be the bottleneck to your business. And that's what containers, you should look from your business value, that's what containers can deliver, right? Your ability as a commerce shop is that you can deploy every hour if you wanted, every day. You don't have to, say, set up a IT or DevOps window, say, okay, next deployment window this month, everybody coordinate and get all your updates in, whether it's the aesthetics of your site, or it's an integration for shipping, or it's a new feed from a partner. You don't have to do that. As soon as you got something of value for your business, deploy it. Get it into the cloud with containers, get it around the world more instantaneously. So I would challenge any retailer brand to say, look, if you're on containers, your business can be much different, and you don't have to worry, if you will, about the challenges around, hey, will it work? Do I have to have this black box? How do I manage it? No, it's a few commands, and you should be able to deploy your updates. My challenge, though, is you should be able to make an update even on Black Friday or the day after. You shouldn't be frozen in time for 3 months as you go through the holiday season. This is your prime time where you're selling your products. Be able to meet that demand and changes for your consumers, your partners. Use things like containers. All right, so what does this look like? Not overly technical here, but these are the 4 commands that any of us can run in the room. No need IT. You can create and deploy a customized shop or marketplace within a matter of minutes. I'm showing you our implementation of containers. This is the way it would look, sped up by about 20 minutes. We're installing Reaction Commerce from GitHub, the open source kind of repository. A few commands. It's going to download, check all the compatibilities of software, download that software, and then create a starting shop or a marketplace that you need. So that's what we're doing here. A few commands. Eventually we'll have a nice pretty UI over this. And then, okay, so you created your customized shop. It's live. Here it is. This is just the out-of-the-box experience. But this should happen for a lot of your applications, right? You might customize it to your integrations, update your products, et cetera, but now you want to deploy a custom shop. And so with this, again, with another few steps, you can go ahead and enter a command and be able to deploy that into the cloud. And that should take all of, at least with our implementation, maybe 15, 20 minutes to be able to do that. Okay, so that's containers. Hope I gave you enough information around how does that play out, but at least you'll know what it is when you hear it in your organization. Okay, the second thing is real-time reactivity. That's what I want to talk to you about. Now, real-time reactivity is not actually technology. I just made it as a placeholder because what we're trying to do and what we've always been trying to do is real-time connect a lot of information from all different systems to be able to do cool new things for our business and for our consumers. And so we think of real-time reactivity, it's a combination of different technologies, but basically it's all about having an event-based or triggered system, right? So whether that's real-time inventory or availability within a marketplace or globally, you want to trigger something, right? Or you want to trigger showing something to your consumer in real time. So I'll give you, a few examples in a minute about what this means and how great this could be, right? But again, this is about a little bit about technology. So underlying real-time reactivity, as mentioned, it's a combination of different technologies. If you look at this Stack Overflow developer survey, just came out a few months ago. The most popular language is JavaScript. Probably heard of JavaScript. JavaScript provides that really cool interaction capabilities, effects in a browser, right? We all use JavaScript. Most of the websites in the world, or all the websites, basically use JavaScript. Now, the reason I pointed this out, something changed, right, around JavaScript. And that in comes this new capability called Nodejs. This is also an open source software capability, as well as other things. Throw out some names you may or may not know. Node.js, React, Angular, GraphQL, webhooks. When you put all this technology together, you get real-time reactivity. And so those things can be as simple as updating your site in real time around inventory, updating images in real time, things like that. But let's talk about some other examples that I think a lot of you have been always trying to get to in the last, I don't know, 5 years. Personalization is one thing that always comes up everywhere. I'm sure, everyone talks about personalization. It's still the #1 initiative by brands and retailers, but you just haven't been able to get to it, right, in some degree. And I really believe that's based upon the underlying technology not having yet gotten there, so you can easily do personalization in the right way. You can manage it and maintain it. And so let's talk about an example of what personalization should be with real-time reactivity. Us as shoppers, if there are things known about us, or as you go through the site, I really think that a site should just automatically update itself without any business rules. It should know that, hey, this person's looking in the category, let's say, of bicycles, looking at tires. Get rid of all the other elements in the UI at that point in time, or other content that's not relevant, and focus your shopper in the UI on bike tires or other things that are complementary to that. Sounds complicated, but it's really not with these types of technologies, right? It could be as simple as, hey, there's a pattern already. Neil's clicking on certain types of tires. It's for mountain bikes. Now you understand maybe you should show mountain bikes there. But we know as personalization, all of us, you might get into your car every morning and drive to work. You hit the memory key or whatever, you hit #1, it adjusts everything for you. Why aren't websites doing that for us? So that's the basic example where personalization is. When we start thinking about this idea of event-driven and reactivity, it could get even more exciting, right? So one thing to think about is this idea of promotions or merchandising in real time. So let's say I'm navigating on a site. I'm in the category of tires. I'm seeing a product grid of 6 products. Number 6 product has now triggered, and I found that it's now crossed below a threshold. There's like 2 left in inventory. And I'm going to sit on 2 left of inventory. No, you want to move that up in real time to the top left of that product grid, all without the user actually refreshing or reloading their browser. It should just go up there. Why? Because we know that we want to merchandise that product to the top left. We all look at the top left. But we know that low inventory banners or indicators to the shopper create urgency. And they create the propensity to actually convert, right? To buy that product. That's a very simple example, but that should be happening on all websites for all of us, right? So we can automatically merchandise, create conversion, meet what the consumer wants, all without in real time, all without the user really doing anything. Another example could be, let's talk a little bit about how this can play out with shipping, obviously, is I'm going through a site, I've carted some items, and now sitting in my cart, I'm still browsing the rest of the site, or some products, right? Let's say the value of that product is $250 sitting in my cart, and I'm still shopping, right? Let's say my average order value for my shop is $112. Well, this is a shopper of high value, right? And let's take a step back. Let's say we're in a store and you're shopping and you're carrying around this basket of a lot of products. You'll probably get the attention of a sales associate in the store to help you, because they're like, oh, look, this person buys a lot of products. What we've missed in online commerce is the ability to know, hey, here's in real time, he or she has carted these products, is a known high-value shopper, do something, right? Instead of the typical shipping promotions or other types of promotions, pop up a message. It says, hey, it seems like you got some great products in your cart. I want to get them to you sooner. Here's the shipping promotion. You've already calculated it for them. It's been sitting in their cart. No other action has happened. It's sitting there waiting for somebody to do something, just like a sales associate. Or over time, maybe you say, hey, high-value customer, as more and more things move online, I think retailers and brands should say, yes, engage a live person. Pop up that live chat with a live person, just like you would in the store. Make that customer realize they can go online and have the assistance that they would need triggered from this type of real-time reactivity, because you're deploying your resources effectively at that moment, where it would be hard otherwise to build in all these business rules or all this analysis. You say, hey, Neil, how is this going to work? I can't always deploy these live agents. Well, now you can deploy them at the right time and place. OK, open source. This is, again, not a technology. This is, I'm sure you guys all heard about open source, but there's things that have changed in the last, really in the last 10 years. And these things shift from basically open source as a way for companies to attract your attention and having a free type of software to, let's say, a company-led project. It's usually was, hey, here's our free stuff, but if you want to use more, buy our commercial stuff. Well, I think there's a fundamental shift in open source, and this has been led by companies you guys know, Google and Facebook, right? They're creating technologies that others in a very a huge community can leverage and innovate upon, right? That is what the new open source model is. That's what we've chosen to do. So, for example, instead of a company saying, hey, this is our open source free, now buy our other proprietary stuff, the new model is get out their initial project like we've done and create a community beyond anything we could have ever done as our own company globally that can innovate and develop on this platform. I know that's the notion of open source. There's differences. There's differences in how innovation is quickly picking up on open source. That is complete transparency, collaboration. So for example, if you go to our project on our website, you can see everything about software development globally. Every single thing that we're working on or anybody's working on, the details, the chat, the timing of things, the issues, it's all visible and transparent, right? And this is not just us, it's other open source platforms and technology companies are saying, let's just open it all up. Let's get the power of the masses of people innovating on a platform. And that's a new way of doing a thing. In fact, 78% of companies are running their company on open source. Now, a lot of this is infrastructure, right? We know that there used to be Oracle and IBM databases, and that was replaced by open source databases like MySQL, and now things like Mongo database and things like that. A lot of disruption in these core technologies. And the reality is this disruption is moving not just in infrastructure, it's moving up and up and up to business critical applications like e-commerce, et cetera. Right? But one of the things, you're probably like, okay, I get all this, I've heard this before. There is a difference. And this is a good difference right here in this summit that I'll share with you, that when you start thinking about, or you're thinking about your technology, your software choices, you're working with a group of software choices, this notion of build versus buy is over. I don't think that should be around anymore. I think there's a new way, right? So yeah, you want to build and own things on your own stack or get your developers, great. Leverage open source capabilities, right? Or you might say, well, we don't have that. We want to actually just go for more of a complete closed system or SaaS solution, and then you go to the right in this. You shouldn't have to do that. I just mentioned that community innovation headed by major companies, like I mentioned, they're innovating on behalf of everyone, so leverage those things. But also, subscribe and get the value-added things you can out of the ecosystem of companies like Shippo, creating extreme capabilities that is simple to integrate with your platform or is pre-integrated. That's the new way. And if you guys think about this, you kind of lay out, or you're working with your CTO or CIO, there needs to be a different way to look at this, and that's what I'm saying. You shouldn't have to choose between this. Also for commerce, I constantly see that, like we saw, 70-something% of retailers think about replatforming. Why? You're going to do that every 2 to 5 years? That's crazy. You'll never be able to keep up, right? So you should start with a platform that you can continue to build upon and keep. It should be yours to own. It's your business, as well as your data, right? You should be able to keep that in one place too. If you switch platforms, I'm talking about any application, you shouldn't have to say, oh my God, now how do I get the data? Or I lose the data? Where do I put all the data? Now, of course, there's like companies you've heard about that's going to solve that problem. But it is eventually, it's really your data, your shop, you should keep forever. So that's what I think as far as the new model of open source. When you think about it, don't think about the left and right of this Venn diagram. Think about it right in the middle. One of the things that I'll share with you is like, you're probably thinking, well, Neil, how does a company like Reaction Commerce make money then if everything's free in a community? Well, it's forcing, and there's been lately, there's been some IPOs. There'll be more IPOs of tech companies that literally is sitting in that new way, right? And so what it means is us, vendors like Reaction, we're forced to constantly think about how we create community and innovation so that the platform is out there being always updated. It should really be the last platform you'll ever need. But we also have to make money as well as our partners. So we have to know through our community, through our brands and retailers, what value-added capabilities can we add that'll give you a competitive advantage. And those are the things that you force vendors to create and provide for you and integrate that with platforms. That's the new model. There shouldn't be any other choices around that. You shouldn't be constrained to the integrations or capabilities of one platform. You should look at it more holistically. Okay, so a little bit of a shameful plug. Let me talk about how this all goes together. So we're Reaction Commerce. We're the largest JavaScript commerce platform on GitHub. GitHub's the large repository. You have about 17 million, I think, 17 million open source projects on this repository you can go to. If you like us, star us, by the way. But what I'm just pointing out is we're just getting going. We're finding a lot of groundswell in a community to develop around this platform. The other thing I want to share is, like, let's take a look at how this all goes together, right? So basic stuff you might think around category management, variance, inventory. Let's take a look at what it would look like for a business. So this is a very simple example. If I'm updating a product, it should be just inline, is what we call from our merchants. You shouldn't have to go to a different screen or go to some technical screen or product information system in detail and update what you're showcasing to your consumers. It should just be just as if you're looking at the PDP. You can import the information, or you can just change it on the fly here. The difference is, while you're doing this, I said, hey, you can update and deploy constantly, is once this is published, it actually in real time goes out to the entire network of everyone using the application. Like, you guys are familiar with Google Docs? Somebody makes a change in a sheet, just appears the other way. That's how this works. That's the power of this technology that we've leveraged, right? The other thing is things like shipping, taxes, discounts, promotions. Let me show you, like, the whole idea of integrating and configuring your different systems, like I said, these add-on types of capabilities. Right, so here, I just actually, you probably missed it. Oh, we just missed it. So we have flat rate shipping, but we have integration with Shippo. In fact, we had demand from our community to come up with a really innovative shipping solution. Actually, we started looking at June 2015 and integrating Shippo, because that's what our community wanted, and that's what we wanted, was to, out of the box, have this type of integration. So what the integration is, a toggle on the Shippo, put in your credentials. That's what a modern integration should be. You shouldn't have a 5-week project plan around this. Again, it's technology enabled for us to be able to provide that to our community. And lastly, this whole idea of, like, Neil, we're going to set up a new shop. It's going to be in the US, but we're going to eventually roll it out globally, right? That shouldn't be a challenge, right? You should just go ahead, look at your site. We enable left to right to right formats, different types of languages. You pick your language, you toggle it on, you publish it, and off you go. That's how global rollout should be. When I say you go, right, we're going to deploy this in containers, like I said initially. So that's a really quick overview of Reaction. I hope I conveyed some of the 3 technology shifts that everybody should be educated around or talking about in your company about, like, where are we going with this? How are we leveraging these technologies? When you think of the challenges that you want to do, and it is technology, think of what that underpinning technology is, how it's rising all boats and should raise your company to a new standard, right? Instead of features and functions, think about technology. That's what's going to drive your business. I get the features and functions things, but as you have those conversations internally, and everyone does, about what platforms or systems you're going to use, take notice of these things, or at least you'll know when your developer or your CTOs are speaking with you, got some understanding of, hey, what are we doing about this? How do we leverage it in the right way? So hopefully that was helpful. Thank you. Any questions? Stunned? Too much geeking out?
I have a question, really quick. What efforts have you guys made to sort of drive developers to working onto your platform? Did it grow organically, or did you actually, like, target certain partnerships with people to drive more developers to work on the platform?
Yeah, it's a great question. When we first started in the project, deployed it or put it up on GitHub about 3 years ago, we actually haven't, it's been all organic to some degree. And the reality is, like, okay, what does that mean? We've got all these developers coming onto our platform. You might have seen, like we say, we're the JavaScript e-commerce platform. It was that simple from a developer standpoint, that developers out there saying, we want to build on Node.js and JavaScript. Where is the platform for this? That is the modern stack. So that was easy enough, in a sense, for developers to say, I want to develop here. I'll add just a little bit of information because I found it interesting, is all around the Silicon Valley, all around the world, developers themselves want to develop on the latest technologies, right? And that's why they are looking at that. They want to be in that next wave of technology and software frameworks and languages. So we're seeing already that interest, that pivot, independently, those developers saying, I want to be a Node developer, I want to extend solutions that are based on Node. So that organically has happened. Now with partnerships and such, we're beginning to really, as we grow as a company and our community grows, we'll be doing hopefully things like you guys are doing. We have online reaction meetups. We just had 168 people on our last meetup last week. That's up from 30. So just like anything else, the groundswell of our project is taken off. And that happens with a lot of projects, but it's a nice thing that all of us can participate in that and see that.
So is there I'm here. So is there a deploy option? Like, are there some drag and drop, you just install Reaction Commerce on, let's say, whatever deploy provider? And also, I had a question about the internationalization. Was it real time, or was it, who did the translations? Were they done beforehand?
Yeah, there's two. So the two things around deployment, I did make it seem very simple. That is actually, when I mentioned the value add offering, we created our own managed platform. You could still create your own shop and own it on the Reaction Commerce open source. But if you choose to want to deploy that, you can use our managed platform. So that capability is, takes in all the orchestration and deployment capabilities, monitoring, scaling, et cetera, on our full platform. But those are the commands that I was showing. But technically, your question, we have a lot of companies that choose not to use our managed platform, want to go do their own, maybe use things like Kubernetes and other things to create their own orchestration and deploy it. I'm just saying there's an option, right, and value to say, maybe you don't want to hire and maintain all that infrastructure yourself. You want to actually hire developers or marketers, whatever else, instead of having to worry about deployment. The second thing you mentioned is internationalization. We do partner, you can use a translation service, right, through and then load the files in. And when you publish, I think what you're saying, when you publish all the files, it is real time. Any updates into the platform are going to be deployed real time. But that you still have to get the translation. That wasn't real time. Go ahead.
So I see a lot of kind of like framework, but one of the things that I evaluate when I'm looking at a potential platform is what kind of work you've done on conversion optimization, shopping cart abandonment, things like that. And then the second part is, it depends, optimizing conversion depends on what type of product it is. So we've used plugins for one product that boost conversions that don't work on another type of product. So do you have a marketplace of plugins for that type of boost?
The first thing is, how do you work at, how does it play into optimization, conversion, analytics, right? So first on analytics and the data I talked about, you can, with our infrastructure, put the data wherever you want it to go, right? Whether it's Stitch or something else. I won't mention the other company name just for courtesy. but from the standpoint of what are the advantages of this framework, right? I'll get back to the technology is because you can actually create many different app containers and many different variations of full-on shop, right? Or you can cut it, what we call microservices, to actually leverage. You can either integrate optimizing other things and manage it that way, or you can have full-on deploy, like customize the whole thing, create a container, deploy it wherever you want to deploy it, and then put your A/B testing or analysis on top of that. So there's multiple ways to look at it. The difference is there's much more freedom, right, to be able to say, I want to, in Germany, I want to have an update and test that specific in that area, right, versus controlling it through more complex means. So that's why your other question was, remind me again? Plugin marketplace. So we're just getting going. We're from a standpoint of the marketplace itself, we provided I kind of glossed over. There's already out of the box integrations with Shippo, Avalara, all different types of payment providers, et cetera. Now we're working with partners, or our overall community is actually creating their own, I wouldn't say plugins, they're actually saying, here's the integration that we would then review, our core team, make sure it's quality checked, the community understands it, then we would actually put it into the core. So when you see, like, that's what I meant is integration shouldn't be a plugin, now I gotta figure out how to connect it. And if 5 people in the audience want to integrate a plugin, it shouldn't be 5 different times. You just somebody integrates it in the community, meaning puts it in the code, and then you, like I said, you toggle it on, put your credentials in. In some cases, the UI of that third-party application could be shown in our application, so the merchant or the administrator doesn't have to go log in somewhere else. Or it can just be like Shippo right now, add your credentials, but still manage it through the Shippo interface.
Yeah, I think my question was similar to what he asked. I think we started on CrateJoy platform, and then we moved over to Shopify because after setting up our shop, we were like, oh, how do I market it? There's no plugins, and this is where the marketplace plays a huge role, which is what CrateJoy is missing right now. And I think this will be important for Reaction also, that there be options available for using third-party apps. Like one of the basic features that we saw was missing in CrateJoy was a good review system. And another one was a good reward system. Like, how do you gamify the whole thing? How do you make sure customers keep coming back and incentivizing customers and all that? So all those, as an engineering team within CrateJoy, they probably don't have capacity to build in the next 6 months or 1 year, but we cannot wait, right? So I think that was one very important thing.
No, that's great. I think community, like the thoughts around open source and community is, it's, from a standpoint of Reaction Commerce is the sponsor, the project owner behind this. A lot of the integrations we're seeing is again through the community, right? And maybe your company doesn't have the developers, but there might be common interest among others in the community around creating similar functionality and doing it on the same framework. So for example, in just the last few months, we actually had a community say, hey, we should have really cool things like notifications. Well, notifications for what? Should that be a plugin? They're like, no, it should be just the basis for everything in a platform. So several contributors also with us put together, a community member actually created notifications. So what I mean by notifications is that anything, as I mentioned in the events, whether it's something shipped, went out of inventory, there's a customer complaint, a new review, whatever it is, you can send a notification, an SMS or email, right, to anybody. You can configure that. So I guess my point is, it's a new way. We're expecting as a company behind an open source project to work with our communities to develop those features versus, that's what I meant on that right-hand side of that, Ben. The roadmap, our roadmap is public, right? That's not based upon just us. That's also our community. So that participation into open source is what we're asking for all companies to look at, right? Because that's going to create innovation. That instead of one single roadmap from a closed system with whatever, it could have 50 developers or 100 developers versus thousands of developers, right, in an open source community. That's what I meant is, long answer to your question is, yes, we want our community to also develop integrations. The difference, to your point, though, is it shouldn't be just this proprietary marketplace and get charged for a plugin. If it's valuable to the platform, it should go into the platform. If you need to subscribe because it's a great value-added service, right, like Shippo, Avalar, and others, subscribe to that. But you shouldn't have to manage that integration.
The idea then is that most of those are kind of behind feature flags then? Okay, so most of the integrations and things are basically just behind feature flags that you can turn off and on because your developers or the community's developing them, right?
Right.
Because the problem I would think would be that a lot of different e-commerce companies have really different requirements from one to another, and they don't necessarily need everything at once. Kind of in contrast to something like GitLab, where it's really consistent in some ways.
Well, I think from a standpoint of the integrations that are coming out of the box, we did vet, and that it is that kind of toggle on, toggle off type of integration. So we do have, technically, we do have requests in for some integrations in a sense of backlog for the community and us to say, should we put it in the core? So there's a quality aspect of some things that will go in the core. but there's also, as you're mentioning, if somebody does an integration or something special, it could still sit out there and be, referenced, but may not be in the core product. So there is and we're going to be doing this more and more. We're actually going to put together, now we're getting a sizable community. We're going to start to build a community board around this. So it's not us that are making these decisions, but I think where you're going with this is that always, how do you provide consistency? How do you know what goes in there? That's our process. We want to make sure that integration is consistent and that it is going to be used. And all the dependencies when it goes into a build and deploy, that's all checked, right? So every version that goes out, there shouldn't be a challenge with it. There shouldn't, or do we have an expectation to say, oh, that integration support? No, that's a commercial edition. We're just really driving community to build on this open source, completely open source project. Great. Well, thank you.